Well, hey there. You're listening to the DIY Marketing School podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Diane Howe, and on this special episode, I've got a guest. Krystal Proffitt and I are going to help you answer the question, should you start a podcast in 2020? I am so excited about today's episode. I'm like geeking out a little bit. I'm just pumped. So a couple of reasons why I'm excited, because I've got a special guest on today. I've never done this before. This is my first special guest, and it's exciting. I love to be able to connect with people in the online space and let them share their gifts with you. And so that's one reason I've got Krystal Proffitt on. She's going to be our guest today. And the other reason is because we're talking about podcasting. I'm so excited about this episode because I actually think that podcasting is a platform that so many people should be considering, and they're not considering it. And there's a few reasons for that. And so Krystal and I were talking, and I asked her to come on the show, mostly because she's a podcasting expert. Like, she totally geeks out on everything podcasting, which you're about to find out and learn from. But she agrees, like, podcasting is so great, and she's really passionate about podcasting. And so I thought, what better person to bring on the show to talk about, helping you answer the question whether or not you should start a podcast in the year 2020 than Krystal. So I'm pumped about it. I'm going to bring her on in a second. But before, I want to tell you a little bit more about Krystal. So I actually chose Krystal because she's kind of my go-to now for podcasting, like, questions. And her content's amazing. She's very generous in the stuff that she creates, like, her podcast itself, which is called the Proffitt Podcast, because her name is Krystal Proffitt. Like, can you get any luckier with the last name than Proffitt? And it's spelled Proffitt, by the way. But so on the Proffitt Podcast, I think she does such a great job. She helps entrepreneurs learn how to start, launch, and market their podcasts. And she's also got a YouTube channel. She's got some courses, and she teaches other stuff like the basics of content creation, editing, formatting, and just other things that kind of go into, marketing your podcast and just, being successful as a podcaster. And she does this in her YouTube channel. So you're definitely going to want to follow her YouTube channel. I will make sure there's a link to it in the show notes. Again, she's just very generous with all of her free content that she puts out there. But she also has some digital courses. She actually just launched a membership that I'm really excited about for her. But she's got this she just has really great programs that I wish were around when I was exploring starting a podcast. I got to say, I met Krystal last year, the same year I did start my podcast. But I really wish that I would have met her a lot sooner, because my one regret with my podcast is I wish I would have done it sooner. I certainly wish I would have started this project way, way, way long ago. But anyway, before I ramble on anymore, I definitely want to get to today's episode, but I just kind of wanted to let you know and set the stage a little bit about why Krystal is here and why I brought her on to talk about this. I just think podcasting is such a great medium right now, and I do want you to consider it, whether you are an established business, an aspiring, professional entrepreneur, or whether or not maybe you're like, why would I ever start a podcast? Don't go anywhere. Stay here and listen. So this episode's going to be great, and I hope you enjoy. Well, hey, Krystal, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you today. You are my very first guest on the DIY Marketing School podcast. So welcome, and thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm always like, should I call her Mel because I know her as Mentor Mel, or is it Melanie? So it's just all the things. I just think of you as like a bucket of fun, and that's just what I think of you. Like, I have so much fun. Like, I'm just so excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, bucket of fun. I love it. I might have to get a t-shirt made that says that. So yeah, as I said in the intro, Krystal and I go way back. We met each other through a program that Krystal enrolled in, that I had enrolled in the year before, and that is Marie Forleo's B School. I've talked about that program before, of course. And so I was one of the mentors in that year that Krystal was enrolled. So that's how we actually connected, and we got to meet at the big Amy Porterfield conference. And it's kind of just been a fun little like business relationship ever since.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I'll talk to my husband. My husband went with me when we went to San Diego in October 2019 to Amy's entrepreneur experience. And it's funny because I'll start talking about, I have Teresa and Amy and Melanie. And he's like, wait, which because he met Melanie. And so he's like, wait, the short hair, right? The short hair one, the one that like she gave us a huge hug. Like when we walked up, I was like, no, that's Melanie. That's Melanie. Like, yes. And we love her. So yes, that's how he knows you. He's like, the one that gave you a huge hug. It's like, yes, she's fantastic.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm so excited to have you on the show today because I think that podcasting, I mean, I started my podcast in 2019, but it was something I wanted to do since I think 2014, 2015. Literally, I bought my mic and everything way back then. And it took me a long time to actually go for it. And I went for it and I have loved it ever since. I think it's so fun. I just think there's so many great opportunities that it can bring you. And I think that a lot of people still, they either afraid to start it or they're overwhelmed about starting one. But also I think that there's so many people that don't necessarily think that a podcast is a good fit for them or their business. And I think that there's so much more that there's so much they don't know or realize. And so I wanted to bring you on the show to talk about help people, kind of like maybe go through that process. Like, should I start a podcast? Is this the year that I should start a podcast? I think there are definitely some common misconceptions about podcasting, as well as that it's, there's so many podcasts out there, but I actually have seen great results for myself. I enjoy doing it. It's super fun. And I just think that I want more people to consider it. And so I wanted to bring you on the show today to help people, go through that process, like basically answer the question, should I consider starting a podcast? And so that's what I want to talk about today. So I'm super excited to have you. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here for me and for my audience. And I know that I'm going to learn some stuff. I always learn stuff from you when I listen to your show or watch your videos and all those things. So yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why or how you got started with podcasting?
Well, it's funny because, and thank you so much, like for all of that, because, this is, you could sit here and look at my journey and everything that I've done. You're like, oh, Krystal's been doing this since 2014, 2015. No, guys, I started in July 2008 is when 2018, 2018, like podcasts were like in their infancy in 2008, but I got started, just not that long ago. And the reason why I'm in a position to speak about podcasting the way that I do today is because I fell in love with it. Like, do you ever do that? Like you find like a great show and you realize, oh my gosh, this has been around forever. And then like you start binge watching it. I have a friend who she didn't know anything about Grey's Anatomy. And then she was like, oh, I'm going to start. And I'm like, good luck. Like, I'll see you in 2 years when you catch up on everything. But it's just like, that is how obsessed I became with podcasting. So a little background on me. I was in the corporate world for about 3.5 years. I worked for a large general contractor. And then my husband works in oil and gas. And we've moved. This is so crazy. There was a point in our lives where we moved 4 times in 5 years. So it was not very conducive for me to, find another job every time. It just didn't make sense. Daycare, we have 3 kids. It was crazy expensive. So I was like, I'm just going to stay at home and I'm going to be the world's best stay-at-home mom. This was like when the Pioneer Woman was like at her peak and like blogging and all these things were going on. And Pinterest was out. So I had all this pressure. I was like, if I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom, I'm going to be the best damn stay-at-home mom that there is. And I realized real fast, it's not for me. It's not for me. Like all the things and like the volunteering and doing all these things. Like, I think it's fantastic that we have moms and parents that love to do that. And but it's not me. It's not me. I was missing something. And so I started blogging. I was terrible at writing. I started YouTube. I had no idea what I was doing. And then I saw a blogger I had watched forever start a podcast. And I was like, oh, so anybody can start a podcast, not just the Dave Ramseys and the people that have these $50,000 studios. Like, anybody can start a podcast. And so that's where I started talking. I had a totally different podcast than what I have today, but I was speaking to female entrepreneurs. I loved it. And then I joined B School with Amy and I got some, one-on-one coaching from her that just changed the whole trajectory of everything that I'm doing. So now I teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. And I just freaking love it. It's so much fun.
I love it. I love that story. I love your background. And I love that you said you freaking love it, because you can tell, those of you that follow Krystal, or you will hopefully follow Krystal after this, she is so passionate about it. I know you always say I geek out everything on podcasting, and it's really fun. I love learning from somebody that you can just, they're passionate about it, and you are. And I love that about you. And I love how it comes across in your content, and you're very passionate about helping people and convincing them and just teaching them how to get going and market their podcast. So it's fantastic. I love it. I love that you said that, because I 100% think that's why I'm always so drawn to you. So that's great. So let's talk a little bit about podcasting in general. I think you mentioned that podcasting sort of hit the map around 2008 or so. I certainly didn't know that, don't know all that stuff, but I remember podcasting was kind of like a thing on your Apple iPod, right? And it was like stories and whatnot. But then it was kind of like, I think, a friend of mine introduced me to podcasting. He sent me a couple of podcasts. He was like, you should listen to these business podcasts. And that was probably 2014, somewhere in there. And I was like, podcasts? What? Like, that's still around, that's still a thing. And I fell in love with the listening to, and I like to listen to them on the treadmill, when I'm in the shower, whatnot. And so that was a while ago, but I feel like podcasting has just almost like exploded. It's been this thing around, but then it was kind of like not overly popular, not real crazy. And then now it's just like really popular. I mean, almost everyone I know listens to or has at least heard of podcasts. So can you talk a little bit about like the state of podcasting and as it is now?
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I started listening. Actually, whenever I first started staying at home, I got very not introverted, because I do not consider myself an introvert whatsoever. But I got very like self-reflecting of like, okay, if I'm not in the corporate world, I'm not working, who am I? Who do I want to be? And so I started like this personal development journey. I would go to the library, take my kids to the library, and start reading a ton of books. Then I got into audiobooks, and then I got into podcasting. And the same as you, like I stumbled upon a few like business podcasts that I really liked. And then I started realizing like, man, you can learn so much from these ultra mega superstar business people that you would never have access to. Like you would either, like I was a stay-at-home mom. I couldn't afford to go to conferences all over the country. I couldn't afford to like sit front row and listen to interviews, from Marie Forleo and Amy Porterfield and, Rachel Hollis. Like she comes on the scene, and it's funny because, you ask about the state of podcasting, and I look at Rachel Hollis. She's a perfect example, because I don't know if you know this, and anybody listening, she had the Deus podcast. And I actually listened to her podcast whenever it was before Rise. She rebranded, she did all these cool things. And I'm just like, it's been such an amazing like case study journey to watch what she's done, because she's been able to go from here, she was a blogger, then she was an author, and then now it's like she has one of the top podcasts in the charts. Like not just, oh, she's top in her category. No, like in the whole charts of all the podcasts in the world. And so I think it's kind of like that locomotive that's like, it's taken it a while to like really get going and for people to get on the bandwagon. But man, it's just charging. It's charging full speed ahead. I don't see it slowing down, because we can start a podcast on your phone. If you did not know that, like I have YouTube videos about like how to start a podcast on your phone, and you don't have to have this super expensive equipment. And that is what I really preach on and I teach is, it does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be perfect. I think that we're really moving away from like people thinking that podcasting should be like radio, where radio does sound perfect and crisp and clear, and you don't have a toddler busting in your office saying, I gotta go potty, which has happened to me a few times on my podcast. But it's real life. And I think that the more you can be relatable, like that's really where people are transitioning from it's got to be perfect and studio quality to you just have to have a very important message that you're passionate about to share with your audience, and people will gravitate toward it. I know that's why I love to listen to your podcast, Melanie. I loved, what was it? It was your LinkedIn episode where you were just like, yeah, I just made a fart noise on here. I went, and I thought it was so funny. I was like, yes,
I did.
Yes. I love it so much.
That's awesome. I agree with you. And I think that one of the things that I find, and I like to explain to people, is that you know, you can blog where you can write, you can do video, and then you can do podcasting. And I think that there's a space for all of them because everybody learns the way they like to learn. I know I always make the joke that I love to listen to podcasts when I'm in the shower, while I'm getting ready, or while I'm walking, like on the treadmill or outside, or while I'm fishing. Those of you that don't know, I love to fish. And I think it's because I can really soak it in. There's something about the audio. I'm not distracted by the video. I'm not distracted because I'm on my computer watching it while I'm getting notifications. I'm not the same thing reading it while I'm in an electronic device. I can just stick my headphones in my ear and I can sort of multitask but listen. And I do think that there's a lot of people that are that way. And I think that's one of the reasons why learning and sharing, what you can teach and sharing your stories in a podcast can be so impactful for people because there's just it's a different way to consume the content. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing audiobooks become so popular as well. And the other reason is just simply you can bring your personality to what you're sharing. It's hard to kind of bring that across in, just text only. Certainly you can do it in video, but not everybody likes to watch video. So I agree. And I think that one of the reasons we're seeing it become more popular is because of that. I think that it's just growing. And I think that they're getting more out of it because of the way that they're consuming that content. And I also love what you said. And I want to reiterate what Krystal said about the quality aspect. I think that as starting entrepreneurs or, small businesses, we have to be scrappy. And I always talk about that. And I know you talk about that as well. And I love that you said that you can literally start a podcast on your phone. You don't need anything but a phone. And I think that that's so key because I do think that I hear people talk about, oh, the tech scares me. So do you think that that is something that people keeps them from thinking they can start a podcast? I want to talk a little bit about getting started and the barrier of entry really is really low. Like you really don't have to spend a bunch of money and all that. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Like the top two questions that I see most often are what equipment do I need and what should I talk about? And so with those questions, there's usually two like under the surface fears that people are dealing with, and it's tech overwhelm, whether it's the equipment or the editing software or really understanding the logistics of how everything works. And then the other thing with content is they're saying, oh, I don't really know what to talk about. It's like, no, you're worried you're going to look stupid. Either it's like a confidence issue, or you're like, oh my gosh, somebody's going to make fun of my voice, or I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm going to make up words and they don't even make sense. Melanie and I were talking about that before we started recording. We're like, we make up words all the time and we're just like, we don't even care because we're just being ourselves. Like, I think that is so important. So let's talk about the tech first. So when it comes to the technology, I tell everybody, you did not know how to use Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Facebook, any of the things that if you were to sit down in front of your computer, you're just like, oh my, duh, I know how to use that. Well, you probably spent 20 years doing it. So yeah, you know how to use it. The audio editing software, like I use Audacity. It's a free software. Okay. So number one, if you're saying it's too expensive, that's free. I love Melanie's like myth busting analogy. It's like, nah, myth busted.
That myth is busted. Yeah.
It's busted. Like, no, that's not an excuse. And that's what a lot of these are. And sometimes it's like blind ignorance, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. That's not your fault. This is why Melanie and I are educating, and telling you like, these are the things you need to know. But when it comes to technology, you need a very basic microphone. You need some sort of audio editing software for, putting together music or adding in, doing interviews and putting in someone's bio or whatever. And then you need a hosting site. And those are literally the only things that you need. And what your hosting site is how you get connected from your just having an audio file on your phone or your computer and getting it out to Google Play, Spotify, like all the places, wherever you're listening to this. You have to have a distribution platform, and that's your hosting site, which can run you anywhere from $12 to $24 a month. Like, guys, it's the same as Netflix. It's not expensive. If you can afford Netflix, you can afford a hosting site. So myth busted. It's not expensive to podcast, but and it's not hard. So what, Melanie, I'm actually curious, what has been your experience? Because like you said, you've kind of listened to podcasts for a long time. What was your experience from going from a consumer of podcast to actually producing a podcast?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll say this, I'll share that when I decided I wanted to do a podcast, I went out and bought a mic. I use the mic, the Blue, it's made by Blue. It's the Yeti mic. And that was kind of like the consumer sort of amateur, podcasting mic. And it still is one that I just recommended. I see that that's what you're using, of course, because it's plug and play. You just plug it into your computer. You don't have to use some mixer board and all this fancy stuff. But I bought the mic and then I was like, I'm doing this. And so I started consuming content, like how do you start a podcast? And I remember downloading an ebook. I think it was from HubSpot. And I started reading all this stuff. And I just quickly was like, oh, this is a little more than I thought it was going to be. But it was, like you said, blind ignorance. I love that phrase. I'm so going to recycle that because it was blind ignorance. I started reading about it. And even as people are hearing you say hosting site and this and that, and stay with us here for a second, because while that might sound foreign to you or new to you, here's the deal. Once I actually got started, I just was like, I'm going to figure this out. Like, I want to do it. I'm figuring it out. And so I researched, I found Buzzsprout, which is the hosting platform. And I know, Krystal, you use the same platform. I researched and I just found Buzzsprout. Boom, there it is. It's $12 a month. It's pretty inexpensive. It basically said you just upload your file and it will distribute it everywhere for you. And I know that in a lot of the podcast communities I see, people will be like, well, how do you get it listed here? And how do you distribute it there? And I'm like, I don't do anything. I just click upload and publish. And it just does everything. It's like, blah, 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 blah. It's out in the world. Yeah. It is so simple. And so to really answer your question, had the one regret I have about starting my podcast is I wish I would have started it a long time ago, because it is not as hard as I thought. Now, granted, I'm not so sure that Buzzsprout was around when I was first thinking about it, but I just think the barrier of entry is even less than it ever was before. So while all that stuff might sound overwhelming or confusing, it really is easy. Like, I remember starting recording and I would like record, and like the very first time I tried to record an episode, it was only like 7 minutes long. And I was like, that's not long enough. Like, what the heck? How is it possible that it's only 7 minutes? I'm such a talker. But honestly, now it's just so easy. I sit down, I know what to do. I have my outline. I just talk, I go for it. And I've even gotten better with editing. Like, I edit as I go. I literally, from start to finish, to record a 20 to 30 minute podcast, I will sit down and it's about 1 hour total, from like sitting down, writing my notes, recording, doing the editing as I go, creating the graphics, creating the description, and getting it up into Buzzsprout. Like, it's maybe an hour. There's obviously other steps about marketing your podcasts and email and all that stuff and I know that you teach a lot of that stuff in your content, but now that I'm doing it, I get better and better and better and better at it. It just gets easier and easier and easier. Like, it's no big deal. Like, I'm like, hey, Addison, I'm going downstairs to record a podcast. She now knows, don't freaking come down here and ask me for like help with your sandwich. She now knows, like, stay upstairs, watch TV, whatever. And it's like, even in my house, it's like we all, it's like easy. It's no big deal. So I love what you said. It really, it's inexpensive. It's easy. And I'm going to say this. I was at Staples the other day, and there's an entire end cap now on one of the aisles, and it's all about podcasting. There's a mic, there's a little mixer board, there's like an arm to attach your microphone to your desk. There's even like a setup that's a ring light with a mic stand, which I'm not I don't know. I didn't really agree with that one, but it was weird. Anyway, so if you can now walk into Staples and go to an end cap, and you can literally inexpensively, because it's all pretty inexpensive, probably on the lower end, but very good for entry level. Like, you literally can buy everything right there. You don't even need to do research on what to buy. It's like right there in front of you. So that's right. To me, that was an indicator. That's a sign that it's getting easier and easier and easier. So for me, it was a lot easier than I ever thought it was going to be. And once I got started, it was no big deal at all. And the other thing I'll add to what you said is that a lot of these hosting sites, hosting platforms, they also can be the website for your podcast too. So if you don't have a website, or if you don't have a personal brand right now, if you're sitting here saying, well, I don't have a website and all this stuff, how would I even get it out there? Well, you can actually pick one of the sites, one of these hosting platforms that provides you with a web page, and it's all hosted with them. So you don't have to do any of the hard work. You don't have to worry about updates or anything. You just put pictures up there and put some content, and you actually have a website that you can send out and market. You don't even have to have any other kind of website. So regardless of whether you own a business or you work somewhere and you just have some side, maybe you're passionate about like puppies and you want to create a podcast about puppies. You could do that. You don't have to have a business about puppies, just for fun,
For
right?
sure. Yeah. Well, and I love what you said too about because this is actually something that I teach people. Like if they're struggling with that confidence factor, y'all, it just gets so much easier. And like Melanie, maybe your first one was 7 minutes because you're just like, wait, I'm still figuring this out. What am I supposed to do? But now, like you said, I can plop down in my chair and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and we're just gonna, bang a few of these out. And but it's like that with life. Like think about it. If you started working out, okay, that first workout is going to suck. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be confusing. And then you're going to be sore for a few days. And then you're just going to be like, wait, why did I sign up for this? Okay. Just think about it like that. But then you come back to the gym, it's your 20th time. And then you're just like, man, I got this. Like we're going to I'm going to sign up for the Olympic, that's crazy. That's crazy. We're not going to be doing Olympic
Dream
stuff yet.
big. Let's dream
But
big.
I'm just saying. But I mean, that could be your dream, is to be, number one in your category one day. It is possible, but you just have to start somewhere. And that is my key phrase. It's my tagline. It is what I literally live my life by, is keep it up. We all have to start somewhere, because Melanie and I both started somewhere. We all started with the nerves that come with like, oh, are people, going to think this? Are they going to do that? And then we were just like, none of that matters. My message is more important than if someone thinks my accent is too bad. Y'all, I'm from Texas. I don't even care if someone wants to make fun of my accent. I'm just like, bless you, bless your heart. I don't care anymore. And I was self-conscious about that in the beginning. And maybe you have something, whether you're like, oh, I had somebody that told me they have like a consistent sniffle because they have really bad allergies, and they were like freaking out about it. And I was like, I don't care. It's like, if I listen to someone, they have a cold. If their message is good enough for me to listen to, I don't care. I mean, I've listened to podcasts where Mark Cuban is sitting by a pool in Las Vegas. You can hear his kids in the background. I don't care what he's doing, because I wanted to listen to his message. So that is like, bottom line, more important than the fancy microphones and all the other fancy equipment, like all of that stuff. It does not matter as long as you have confidence in your message and what you're sharing. So I feel like I'm on my soapbox. I'm going to step off.
I love
okay.
that. I love it. And in that note, I'm going to clear my throat. And nobody cares, right?
Yeah.
I love it. And I think that you're right. I think that confidence does come into it. And here's what I think I will basically, from experience, from starting the podcast to now, being over 25 episodes in, I actually have discovered I absolutely love it. I love it more than I ever thought I would. But I also, I am more confident about it. And I really enjoy the moments when I'm somewhere, like when we went to EE with AP, Entrepreneur Experience with Amy Porterfield is what EE with AP stands for. There you go. It's just a mouthful. So we all us EE people, we just call EE or EE with AP. And so when I went last year, it was really fun to have like total strangers coming up to me and talking about a particular episode. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was such a wonderful feeling. So not only is it fun, I am finding that it's making an impact and it's reaching people that I don't even realize it's reaching, that I maybe never would have reached before. And I do think that, podcasting provides opportunity for people. And I wanted to know, I know that you've had a number of opportunities. I feel like you're kind of blowing up right now. You've been like featured on, a Buzzsprout article. You're like, oh, I'm speaking at this conference. So why don't you talk a little bit about, if you can, share just some of the wonderful things, some of the opportunities that you've seen that have come your way that you can directly relate to podcasting.
Yeah, well, it's funny because we'll talk about Buzzsprout first, because so like we've said, like this episode is not sponsored by Buzzsprout, but I talk about them all the time because they just have like a culture that I would love to have one day, which I'm creating. Scratch that. Erase everything I just said.
Eat it back up.
Because that is what I'm creating. Not that I want to have one day. That is what I'm creating, because they are all about service and serving their people and showing up. And I've really like attached to that idea and everything that I do. So they asked me to be featured on their podcast. This was before I even started teaching podcasting. I think they knew that I was so geeky about it, and they were just paying attention to everything that I was doing. Now I'm actually in 2020, I'm part of their Buzzsprout creator program, which is basically me. Like, they've told me, they're like, we want to help you be the best podcaster that you can be. Guys, this is phenomenal that here I am. Like, I don't have a number one podcast in any category.
Yet.
Okay. I've been in the top yet. Yeah, exactly. I've been in the top 25 several times in my category, which is phenomenal. It's amazing. But Buzzsprout is actually like, they're rooting for me and they're like endorsing me and like talking. So that's an opportunity to like have a strategic partnership. Like, this is what they do podcasting. And it's like, I'm not chasing these little like affiliate programs. It's like, oh, maybe I can make, $10 here and there. No, I'm going big. And I want to partner with these people that are powerhouses in the industry, because I've learned so much. I've learned like, oh wait, I was doing that totally wrong. But now I have these people that are like, Krystal, please don't ever do that again. Like, you totally messed up. Don't do that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, now I'm paying attention. So I'm getting the chance to learn from these people who know way more about sound engineering and audio engineering. And like, I didn't even know an audio engineer was a thing until I started podcasting. I was like, oh wait, if I'm going to teach people, maybe I should know a little bit about that too. But it just goes to show, like, and I love Marie Forleo. She says this, and it's like the one thing that I've really clung on to from her is you have to start before you're ready. Guys, I didn't start this podcast or this teaching or anything knowing that a big company like Buzzsprout would be like, hey, we want to like take you alongside of us. I just got started because I took a skill, if you want to call it that. My husband probably wouldn't call it a skill. He'd say like, yeah, it's something I live with, that I love to talk. I love to talk and I love to connect with people. And it's just something that I am innately good at. It is something in my DNA, and I just went with it. So that's been a huge opportunity. I have been asked to, I'm actually, as of this recording, I'm going to be speaking at the first ever Spark Christian Podcast Conference. It's next week in Houston, which is phenomenal. I'm so excited. And I'm just, it's like literally 10 minutes from my house. I'm so excited about this. But it's just getting recognized by other people saying, oh, Krystal, like, you need to talk to Krystal because she's the one that knows this and that. But I want to be very clear. Everything that I'm doing, you can do too. And the reason why I say that is because I just keep showing up for my audience and people are noticing. So I know Melanie is so great about being consistent and like preaching like, hey, if you want to have a great brand, you got to show up. You got to keep showing up, even when it's hard, even when it sucks. Sometimes like you got to just keep showing up and be consistent, because that is what people pay attention to. And that's how you get noticed and you get your brand to stand out from everyone else, because it's hard. I mean, I don't know, Melanie, if you've shared about any of your experience, but I'm sure there's days where you're like, crap, I got to put another podcast episode. Oh crap, Addison got sick or she had to stay home from school. Like, now I have to like work something in my schedule, but I have to show up for my audience. And to me, that is what's most important, is everybody listening to this right now, understanding that you can do all of this too, whether it's with a podcast or a blog or whatever gifts you have. What is it? You have to tell me. Don't let your gifts go ungiven.
Gifts go ungiven.
Did I say it? Oh, yes. I said it. God, that was not planned, guys. Like, this is Melanie's branding, like sinking into my, like, so it's in my core now.
But I'm not editing it out.
It's there now. But guys, like, it's just podcasting is so much fun. I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you to come learn from me. Like, if podcasting is not your thing, then you know that in your core. But if you want somebody who's got a lot of energy around podcasting, you need to come hang out with me, because totally. I have, oh my gosh, like, it's so dang fun. And that is the energy I want to spread to other people, is to have fun with your podcast. It's not about the numbers. It's not about, oh, how many downloads, how many listeners do you have? It's just about showing up and having fun, busting those myths, making up words and making fart noises. Like, who cares? Just be yourself, be confident, and share your message. So
I love it. I love that. And I think you're right. I think it's just, if you have something you're passionate about, if you have I'm always talking about how, I talk about social media quite a bit, but we're not on social media to sell. We're there to attract the right people to us, to share ourselves, to be out there, to put ourselves out there so we can connect with people and share our gifts. And that gift might be anything from you teaching somebody how to pick out the right sweeper to teaching somebody yoga to like coaching them through something. I mean, there's so many things out there that I think entrepreneurs can offer. And I just think that podcasting is just another way for you to do exactly that, that it just deeply connects with people because of the voice. And Krystal's right. You just get out there and you just serve people. And it's no different than how you show up in social media or how you show up in maybe a Facebook group. And I know Krystal is amazing at this. I'm in multiple Facebook groups with her. And anytime I see somebody asking a question about anything related to podcasting, I don't even need to tag her because she's already there. She's already in the comments, like giving advice away. And Krystal does have an online course about how to start your podcast. And she has great content out there. And she's never like, go watch my video or go do this. She's just offering herself up. And so I think that people, when you have a podcast, it's just another place for them to they discover you. And it's another way for them to just continue to learn from you and get to know you. And, as Krystal is proof, it also can provide you with opportunities that you don't even expect or even seek out. And, whether it be to be a presenter or to be a guest on somebody else's podcast or to be showcased in a software company, or like you said, now you're a part of this, exclusive group where they are helping you be great. And I'm sure that you're helping them improve the platform in return. So all that stuff you would have never have had you not just gotten out there, started your podcast and figured it out along the way. So I love it. And I love that story for sure. So tell me, let's talk a little bit about the I think that people may still be thinking to themselves, well, does podcasting fit my business? So can you talk a little bit about how, do you have to have a certain type of business for podcasting to make sense? I mean, I know I mentioned you don't even have to have a business. You could just be passionate about a particular topic and create a podcast. But let's talk a little bit about the business aspect of it. So are there any businesses that it doesn't fit for, do you think?
I don't think so. I think that, I could tell anybody could, like, if this was like a call-in show, oh my gosh, maybe Melanie and I need to have a call-in show. Like that's something we'll put on the back burner for one day.
Down. I'm putting that one in the parking lot. I'm writing that one down.
Oh my gosh. Because I'm just sitting here imagining, like, I don't care. You could tell me you have a multi-level marketing business. You could be a realtor. You could have a gym. You could have a spa. I don't care what it is, because if you are doing marketing properly, all you're trying to do is attract customers to buy whatever it is that you're selling, right? Well, that's not very sexy. That's not very fun. But if you lead with value, and this is like, I have a totally different, how like you pick your word for 2020. I have a totally different word. But if I were to have like a sub word, it would be value. Because I'm almost sick of hearing myself say this, because I say it all the time, but it's really like, it is a core belief, is like, okay, here's prime example. Let's say you're in real estate and you're like, like, no, I don't have an online business. Like I'm just, I'm hitting the pavement, doing this and that. But what if you started a podcast that is about Houston, Texas, and it is just about this area? And you're competing with all the other people that are putting out Facebook ads, or they're doing this or doing all this other marketing, but you're just like the marketing or the real estate podcast for the Houston, Texas area. It could just be selling real estate with Krystal in Houston, whatever, like that's a terrible name. We would have to think more about the name because that's terrible. But
it's okay. Off the top of my head. Put you on the spot with that one. Yeah. Hey, Krystal did not say she was a branding expert. Okay.
Yeah.
No. She's a podcast expert.
No. I have tons of ideas, but they're not always good. Let's just throw that out there.
Same.
I mean, but if you were like Melanie was like, oh, I have to relocate to the Houston area, and then you're searching for it, like you're Googling Houston realtors and you're trying to find somebody, and then you're like, wait, this chick has a podcast. Wait, she has 50 episodes and 10 of them are about different areas or different school districts in Houston. And then they're about, oh, this is how the taxes are broken down by categories in Houston. And this is like, do you see where I'm going with this? She's adding value without selling you anything. She's just trying to provide like, hey, I just want you to know, like, this is out there. So you could say, here are the 10 top questions that I get asked from a brand new home buyer. And this is what people ask me whenever they want to turn this into a rental property. And this is what they ask me, like just adding value in every single aspect of what you do attracts people to you, and you're not going to be for everybody. I know Melanie talks about this because it's so important to understand is like the attraction and repelling people. You won't be for everybody. Yep. That is okay. I'm not for everybody. And I understand that.
And
people
neither
that
am
want
I.
like people that want like a super high quality, like, oh, we don't want to hear kids in the background. We don't want to hear the dog barking. We don't want to hear all these things. And I'm just like, sorry, you're not my people. If you don't like Friends and you can't sit here and drink an entire pot of coffee with me, we probably can't be friends. Okay. I'm just going to throw that out there.
and those people that don't like fart noises on podcasts aren't even listening to this podcast because
yeah,
I did that on episode 25. So yeah. Yeah. Hilarious. And you're right. I think you're right. I mean, anywhere from a realtor to, I mean, I think that podcasting is, again, as you said, it's just another way for you to share that value. And I think, and I hope that people are thinking about this. There are definitely certain industries where there's nobody doing podcasting in that industry, or there's very few people, and you can really stand out. I know that a lot of people talk about, well, I kind of missed the boat on Facebook, or I kind of missed the boat on, Instagram. I'm like way behind. I'm just not getting started. I sort of missed that whole window of opportunity. Well, I think podcasting is an area where that window is still there. It's still wide open. And I think that there are a lot of industries where, yeah, maybe social media is really busy for your space, but maybe podcasting isn't. So why not step out and go for it and be one of those, people that are out on that bleeding edge in your industry and have a podcast. I totally agree with you, Krystal. I think that just about any business, I mean, if you're in business then you need to have a way to share value. All podcasting is an audio version of you doing just that. So there's really, in a way, no excuse unless your ideal customer, we'll just say that they are hearing impaired. That might be a situation where podcasting may not be your place. So there are certainly some exceptions, but that's exactly what they are. They're exceptions. And so I totally agree.
I just wanted to hit real fast on what you were talking about, because I am super dorky about all this stuff. Like I said, I grabbed some statistics before and I sent them to Melanie. But guys, podcasting is still the Wild West. Okay. Whenever I got started, there was around 400,000 podcasts. And then the statistics from last year in 2019 are 850,000. Guys, there's not even a million podcasts in the world. Do you hear what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. There is not even a million as of right now recording this podcast, but there are over 500 million blogs. Okay.
Wow.
Like, that's just a little perspective, because I know people are like, oh, I want to try this, I want to try that. And I'm just like, guys, hear me out. And it doesn't have to be a super fancy, like highly produced thing. Get your phone out, record yourself, share your thoughts, share your message, and put it out to the world.
I love it. And you're so right. I mean, basically, guys, what she's saying in a nutshell, it is not a saturated market. Even though you're consuming podcasts, or you're looking through the podcast list and you're like, there's already 50 marketing podcasts. I mean, if I were terrified, if I said that marketing, you guys, there are a million people teaching marketing out there, right? But there's only one me teaching marketing. There's a bunch of people teaching podcasting, but there's only one Krystal Proffitt teaching podcasting. So you have to always remember that. And I love that. I think that's such a great point. And in this situation, what you're saying is the market is absolutely not saturated. And not. Even if you feel like it might be, here's what I always say about a saturated market. It's not saturated. It's actually awareness. So if there are that many people doing a podcast in your space, then that just means there's that many people listening. And so it's actually a good thing. Look at it as a good thing that there's people that need it, and there's people looking for it, and they can come find you, and everyone's going to want to learn just from you. It's kind of like, there's only so many people that are a good fit for you to date or to be good friends with or whatnot. Well, it's the same when it comes to business relationships and learning relationships. So it's not saturated. It's just more awareness. And so I love that you just pointed out there's a huge window of opportunity here for you to stand out in this wonderful world of podcasting. So, well, this has been amazing. So much value, so much stuff. I appreciate it so much. I have one last question for you before I let you go. And that is, I want to know what podcasts you listen to. And I know I know you listen to our girl, Amy Porterfield. I know that. But what other
Show.
podcasts do you listen to?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I am a huge fan of The Office, and
Yeah.
I listen to the Office Ladies podcast. Holy moly. Like that is honestly like my favorite. Like I look forward to it every Wednesday. It comes out on Tuesday, but I go to the gym and run on Wednesday. So I like, that's my treat. And I look forward to it every single week. Like y'all, I geek out on podcasting, but I really geek out on The Office. And so that is like that's like that's my indulgent podcast I love. I also love Sibling Revelry, who's Kate and Oliver Hudson. If y'all know who Kate Hudson is, Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell, like that is fantastic. That's like my entertainment. Armchair Expert, Dax Shepard. And then those are like I just want to kind of put something in my ears and fold laundry. And then I have Amy Porterfield. I have the DIY Marketing School.
What's that?
And then I love Stu McLaren's podcast is fantastic. Marketing Your Business. He just gives such awesome nuggets of wisdom. Of course, I like Rachel Hollis, her Rise. I listened to their Rise Together podcast a little bit. I feel like I really gravitate more towards the Rise specifically. I could just go on and on, but those are some of my favorites.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. Krystal, thank you so much again. And before we go, tell people, I know that you have a YouTube channel and you're all over the place, but if people want to learn more from you, tell them the best way for them to learn from you, get a hold of you. And I know, of course, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast episode, you do have a course where people can learn how to create a podcast. So tell them how they can learn from you and where they can follow you, but also share just a little bit about this course that you're doing.
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me because this has been so much fun. I can't wait. Like we're going to have to, I'm like, Melanie's been on my podcast, so you have to go listen to that. And then I want her to come back on because
we're going to do some repeats. You're going to come back.
But, okay. So you can go to krystalproffitt.com/podcast bootcamp. This is actually a kind of like a teaser, like a little bit of a taste of my teaching style and how I am. It's a free 5-day video series that walks you through the basics of how to start a podcast, how to launch a podcast, and how to market a podcast, but also how to be consistent and plan your content, because these are the things that I see people struggle with the most. So it's kind of like, it's a little bit of like drinking from a fire hose, but you can always go back and watch the videos, and there's tons of free resources in there. But the course, I have Profit Podcasting, and it's kind of taking those exact same concepts and going like we're deep diving into all of them, because I go really deep in all of these concepts because I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. I want you to take the bite-sized pieces and then put them together and create the beautiful podcasting puzzle that is your message. And I'm just so passionate about letting everybody know there are no stupid questions. Like if there are, I've asked them and I've felt dumb myself. So don't worry. I've gone before you. So you don't have to worry about feeling dumb. So that is what I have. And I would love for everybody to come follow me on social. Krystal Proffitt TX, Krystal with the K. Profit has 2 F's, 2 T's. I'm sure Melanie will link to everything.
Yep.
And
we'll put all this in the show notes for sure.
Yes. And I'm super excited about what 2020 has in store, because this rocket ship ain't slowing down. We're just getting started and I'm excited.
I love it. And on that note, we are going to close it up. So Krystal, thanks again so much for being here. It's been great having you on the show, and I can't wait to have you again next time.
Thanks for having me.
Well, how much fun was that? So much fun. I hope that you enjoyed the episode, and I hope that you're now kind of thinking about podcasting a little differently than maybe you did before. Our goal with this episode was to just get anyone who's maybe on the fence about it to get off the fence and go. I mean, you heard it from Krystal. Just get started, get going with it. It does get easier, and you really don't need all of the fancy to get it started. So be scrappy, get fancy later if you want. But I loved having Krystal on the show because I do love her dearly. She is definitely one of my business buddies, and we hop on Voxer quite a bit and kind of collaborate, but also just kind of go through the whole entrepreneurial journey together. And she's so sweet, and she's so genuine, and she is really, really knowledgeable and just really, really smart in this area. So I'm super excited that I was able to bring her on here and share her with you. So I will make sure that I include in the show notes some ways that you can follow and stay in touch with Krystal. But as she mentioned, make sure that you go to krystalproffitt.com/podcasting bootcamp. That is an incredible piece of content that she's created for you. So be sure to check that out. Well, at this point, all my typical followers know that this is where I tell you to go be awesome. But if you're new around here, then I would love for you to subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss any of the great episodes that I've got planned for you guys. And then also, I have a community of people who are doing their own marketing. You're a marketing do-it-yourselfer. So it's a Facebook group called DIY Marketing with Melanie, and it's just a community of support, additional teachings, and we all help each other out, and we just have a lot of fun in there. So if you are a do-it-yourself marketer, be sure to join that community. I'd love to see you over there, and don't forget to introduce yourself. So, all right, this is the part where I sign off and I tell you to go be awesome.